Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we are back.
We are back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads. Thank you.
And good night.
There's such a buildup in the beginning when we do the intro. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Yeah?
Things are really busy.
Yeah,
It's been a long day.
It sounds like we are always busy.
Yeah, that's a perpetual thing.
And there's also something that just keeps us coming back here.
Yes.
What do you think it is? The fame?
Talked about this earlier. The fame
And the money.
and the millions of adoring fans.
I think that is it. No, our numbers are doing pretty good, actually.
yeah.
So we
Not
appreciate
millions,
that.
but we do have some good.
Yeah, and so
Appreciate everybody
we like to keep
tuning
this thing going. There's great feedback. People are emailing us. If people want to get a hold of us, Alan, what do they do?
Podcast at dudestodads.com or any social media outlet, Dudes to Dads, with the exception of YouTube, which is Dad University.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes, it is. Awesome. So today's episode 125 is called The Art of Apologizing. Mm-hmm. Is saying sorry enough?
Right.
So you could do something wrong, just, hey, sorry.
Whoops.
That's good.
My bad.
I'm good to go.
Sorry.
No, and I think we have to admit it as men. I think a lot of men have difficulty with apologizing.
Sure.
I don't know if it's just a genetic thing, a testosterone thing. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I could see it as being, I wouldn't say
I think a lot of people, maybe in general, maybe women do too.
Yeah.
I can't speak for
No
them.
one wants to admit they're wrong. No one feels good when things are wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, especially kids.
Yes.
Kids, whether it's not knowing how to apologize, and we're talking about small children.
Yeah.
There are those occasions though, because we teach them, and then they can just sound kind of like a robot, and we say well, what do you say? No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And there's not really a meaning behind it or an understanding of what's going on.
Right.
So, apologizing is just like something that you're supposed to do when you do something wrong.
Sure.
But, apologies are pointless unless the people feel that the offender meant it.
Right. There has to be intent behind it.
Yeah. And that could be like the tone of voice. It could be body language. There's a lot of things like that.
Yeah.
So how would you say you are with apologizing?
I'm pretty good. I mean,
or you're just never wrong.
Yeah, right.
Never make a mistake.
Exactly why I'm good at it.
Right.
No, I think it's more about, if I feel like I justified that, I'm really sorry that happened, and even if I don't agree with what they're upset about, I will apologize for making them feel bad. Right. It's like, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. It was not my intent to make you feel that way. Even if it's like an
Even though you have responsible for your own feelings, I'm sorry for doing that.
Right. And I try not to phrase it that way because it's just being a jerk. Yeah. But that being said, there is something to be said to at least acknowledging their feelings to somebody. Because you can have a disagreement, but it's like, I'm really sorry I made you feel that.
Yeah. And I think I personally am getting better with it. I think as I have, now with children, much better. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is because of my thought of, I got to teach them how to apologize.
Yeah.
And I think in my previous life, I was probably less inclined to apologize or do that. Mm-hmm. But I think now having more empathy, having more, and like I said, wanting to teach them how this works, I'm more inclined to do that.
Right.
So I was reading, somebody had written a formula essentially for apologizing. There was nobody really attributed to it, so I don't know who the creator was.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really cool. So I just was going to go, it was just 4 parts of an apology. Mm-hmm. So the first is saying, I'm sorry for. Mm-hmm. So whatever you're sorry for, I'm giving you an example. I'm sorry for hitting you when you took my toy. Like maybe a kid is saying this,
Sure.
So you're teaching the child to say hey, I'm sorry for hitting you when you took my toy. And it's very important to be specific and not just say, I'm sorry. So it's, I'm sorry for, and being very, very specific. So you teach your child how to be specific because they have to understand what it is that they're apologizing for. So we often will say that, well, what are you sorry for?
Like, I don't know. You look upset.
Well, I'm sorry for getting caught.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I'm sorry you got upset at that.
Yeah, exactly.
but they have to understand what they're sorry for.
Right.
And then the second thing is this is wrong because. So, you ask your child, so, why was this wrong? Well, it's wrong because I could have hurt you when I hit you, if they were saying it to their brother or sister or something like that. So they have to understand why it's wrong and why it's unacceptable, and that's a very clear message to understand. Okay, so I'm sorry for this, very specific, and this was wrong. It was wrong for me to do this because whatever, how it affected the other person or how wrong it was. And then the third thing is, in the future, I will. So maybe you ask your child, so, what would you do in the future? And they may say, well, I would ask nicely to get my toy back rather than hit. That would be an option.
It's a great option.
But this is probably the most crucial. It's teaching the child what to do correctly.
Yes.
And a child will often say, I don't know. And so then we follow up with, well, if you did know, what would you do?
Yeah.
And allow them to answer it. And don't say, well, no, that's not right. We say, well, what about it? What's something else we could do?
Sure.
And so, because you don't want them to be discouraged, and they can often, and they may not know the answer.
No, you got to coach them through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point. Not necessarily discouraging, but saying, okay, that might be a way. How about another way? What other way could we do it? And then until they get to that spot where it's like, yeah, that's a good one. I like that one.
Right. Yeah. It's really important that they know how to do it correctly. And, it's what is it that they're going to learn from this, and so you have to be mindful of that. And then the fourth one that they say is, will you forgive me? So actually asking for the forgiveness, you have to be prepared that they could say no. Like if your sibling, especially like younger sibling, whatever, is like, no, I'm not going to forgive you.
Yeah.
Granted, I think most kids do.
Yeah.
It's really us adults that are the ones that don't forgive.
Hold grudges. Yeah. Fight wars over it.
Totally. But it helps restore the relationship. So that's what, you want to help do that. So I think for many situations, the formula will work. So just repeating again. So I'm sorry for, this is wrong because, in the future I will. Will you forgive me? So that's sort of the formula. I do think this would work with young kids. I think the most important part, though, is leading by example, and like what we talked about. And I think, as an adult, you do need to apologize when you do something wrong and your kids need to see it and hear it. And that could be something with your kids directly, or they see it to your spouse, or they see it to a neighbor or a friend or what. And I think that's where I maybe have learned to apologize more in those kinds of situations, rather than sort of just standing ground and just, well, sorry, that's the way it is.
There's something a little more humbling about just admitting that you're wrong, I guess you do a good job of this, right? Because I think your son at one point in time had that. He had a statement similar to that, where he stopped in his tracks and basically said,
it's funny. Just the other night, I had a situation where I felt I did need to apologize to one of my kids because of how I acted, and I'll get to kind of how that happens. But I was stressed out with some other stuff going on, and just raised my voice, and I was not happy with how I acted, and I could tell my child wasn't either. And so it happens. And so I cooled down and was, fine. And then went when we were going to sleep and was apologizing and said, hey, listen, I really could have handled that better.
Yeah.
It does, just because of how I was feeling because of this doesn't mean I had, and I just sort of walked through it, and they were like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's okay.
Yeah.
But
It's all good, Dad.
right. But hearing that and seeing that, you're exactly right, that's when we then see the situations where I'm able to model that behavior, and they'll see it, and then that'll come out when they do it.
Exactly.
And
because no one's perfect. You're always going to make mistakes. So it's nice to be able to recognize, hey, I made a mistake. Let me make sure the people that are around me understand that I didn't mean it.
Right. And they didn't. Here's the reality is, like, I don't think we often think of that. Unless I was really conscious of it, I don't know that I would have normally oh, yeah, I need to apologize to my kid, unless you did something really wrong.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But just the normal yell or the normal reprimand or something where I really I was out of line.
Yeah.
Like if I look back and I'm like, I mean, my child didn't do anything.
Right. Yeah. You're right.
I was just out of line. You know?
Yeah.
And even if they did do something, they didn't deserve to be treated like that.
Exactly.
You know, because I want the respect. I want to be treated with respect too. I have to treat them that way. So it's a learning experience for sure.
Sure.
So while I like the formula, there were some things and some elements that I wanted to add to it, after reviewing it and kind of seeing. So the first thing is empathy, our magic-y word. So I think empathy needs to be deployed all around in these kinds of situations. So as an example, as the parent, the offender was feeling a certain way and didn't know how to act. Okay. So in a sense, they're still learning what is correct behavior.
Right.
So as the parent, and I'll give the example, and let's say my son did something to my daughter. This is a situation where let's say he hit her, just for an example. And I have to actually have a little bit of empathy. It's hard to have empathy when somebody hits, but to understand he's feeling something.
Sure.
There's something that's bothering him, or he's not, the correct behavior hasn't been learned.
Right. Right.
And so that's on me for the most part, or all of it.
Yeah.
So he either hasn't learned the behavior. So I have to have some sense of empathy for either to teach him and for him to learn, or, hey, what was going on? What were you thinking when that happened? So I think, it's really, really important, which I don't think we think that. We just reprimand and be like, how could you do that to your sister? And that's it, without thinking like, whoa, wait a second, something's going on.
Right.
So that's, I wrote down the example, when you took your brother's toy and broke it, how were you feeling when you did that? Were you angry? Or maybe they'll say it and you said, so you felt angry and you hit your brother as a result of that, or your sister or whatever. And kind of having them sort of tap into that emotion. So the other is, of course, to empathize with the victim. Let's call it the victim. I mean, I don't like using that term, but the person who gets the bad end of the situation. And asking the offender to have some empathy and saying, how do you think your brother or sister felt when you hit them? Like, how do you think that feels? And they might say, well, not good. That's a typical answer. And say, would you want to feel like that? And so that creates the empathy.
Sure.
Rather than just a reprimand or yell or, remove them from the situation. It's like, how would and we always say, do unto others. I mean, there's other, teachings that can be done there, but basically is having that empathy and understand, so that the child understands, like, listen, how would you feel if your sibling was hitting you or hit you? It's, what do you think? And they'd be like, no. Or sometimes, because they'll be a little snappy about it, and they'll be like, well, I wouldn't care. I'd hit him back, or whatever. And then you have a whole different situation. Yeah. But that's in general, having the empathy sort of all around, I think helps everybody understand it and learn from it.
Yeah.
The second part is, which we talked about, making the amends. So while, I think while sorry is good, we typically extend it a little bit more and say, what could you do to fix the situation or help? So, in the example, you hit your brother, how can you fix the situation? And asking that question. And so, and there could be a lot of different answers. It could be, you could go, do you need to go get him an ice pack? Maybe they hurt them. How about you give them a hug?
Jeez.
Yeah.
Ice pack. Steak over the eye.
Yeah, totally. Bobby Brady.
Yeah.
Ice pack, a hug, something like that. Or even have the child do something for them as a makeup. So maybe they're going to help them in some other situation, or, something where they can be nice to them and make it up.
Right.
So, call it making amends or something like that. It's just, it's more than the sorry. And that's part of the title. It's like the sorry is not enough. Yeah. So I think it's important. And then, and again, when we talk about, about learning from it, they say, that's kind of the most important the most important thing is like, what am I going to do next time? Which we talked about is, what is the learning experience here? It's like we're all going to make mistakes, and it's okay to make a mistake. And so it's okay for them to know that and saying, listen, we're all going to get angry. We're all going to be upset at our brother or sister or whatever. It's really about how you handle it.
Right.
And you're going to be in the situation again. What would you do differently next time?
Yeah.
And it's a very, very clear message. It's just saying sorry and then doing these things. It's not easy. It's not easy for a kid, certainly not easy for an adult all the time. But I think when we model the behavior, we can help them through the process, and, they'll be better equipped to have empathy for others and admit when they've done something wrong. If they know that it's okay to make mistakes, they're more likely to admit it and then be okay with it.
Yeah. That's the important part of what empathy should be doing, is teaching you how that certain things are okay, but try not to do them. But when they do happen, don't beat yourself up over it.
Don't do it 4 times.
And don't do it. Yeah. And don't keep doing it.
That's the 6th time you've hit your brother.
Exactly. I have empathy. I feel what he's feeling.
Right. Well, you get the little smirks and the little, those kinds of things, or you see kids on the playground, they're like, and the parent will say something, they're like, I'm sorry. And then they walk away.
Sure,
and it's like, no, that wasn't really. So even that's why I said the body language and the tone of voice, that kind of stuff really matters too. And it's either they become a really good actor, or they actually learned how to have that empathy for somebody.
And either way, it'd be great.
Yeah, right. Then you can at least make some money off that.
Exactly.
So I think, they'll probably be better off if they learn that. And so I think it's, obviously important for us to show it and to lead by example.
For sure.
As we say.
Yeah.
So if anybody else has any tips or questions or comments, Alan, what shall they do?
You can email us at podcast@dudesdads.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter, Facebook. I'm sure there's other ones, but Dudes to Dads.
Instagram.
You have Instagram account? Dudes to Dads? We should be
Dad University.
Dad University. There we go. Dad University, and that could segue into YouTube as well. Also, please go to iTunes and Stitcher and leave reviews. Dudes to Dads, go find us there. Subscribe, leave some reviews. It gets the show moving, and we really appreciate the feedback.
Yeah. And I apologize. I'm not sure for what. But once again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
As always, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.